All right. This is not my usual content, but Mike Lee changes everything. And yeah, I've been planning on doing a second channel where I have hot takes, opinions, whether it's pop culture, history, language, whatever other things I'm interested in besides true crime. But Mike Lee, again, he changes everything. So if you're unaware, my lovely senator had some lovely things to say. This is after the shootings, plural, in Minnesota, where one of his Senate colleagues, mind you, was assassinated, as was her spouse, and another couple were also shot at, and looks like they will probably survive. Also, a dog died as well. This is the other one he put out. Yeah, Mike Lee is scum. Let's put it that way. So here's for those saying the Utahns like this guy or want him in office or all of those things, I'm going to explain why we can't get rid of them. Why there's a small pocket of people who have this control, and it's driving us all bonkers. It's very much like we look to us sane Americans look outside to the rest of the world and say, actually, we can't stand Trump. That's what it's like being a Utah represented by Mike Lee. Just showing my ring because I just realized this is how upset I am. I'm not even preparing properly. So just to give you an idea, Utah is not nearly as red as people think it is. It's the Republicans it's gerrymandered up the wazoo, and there's other weird things that are getting in the way. So let me show you. In the 2016 election, Utah has a caucus system, which is just so screwy and messed up. We'll get to that in a second. Check this out. These were the results of, essentially think of it as the presidential primary election. It's caucus, but regardless, Trump took third among the people who would become diehard MAGA. He came in third behind Ted Cruz. And in my precinct, he came in fourth. People did not like him. Really, truly. There were so many people in Utah that just could not stand Trump. But the problem is that there's this cultural thing, and I think it started with church stuff, but it is definitely not anymore. We have many leaders who've been Democrat, who are Democrat, and the state is definitely not as bright red as it once was. But especially when boomer and older, they get this mentality that they think the Democrats are somehow evil. Forget the fact that Senator Harry Reid from Nevada was a Latter-day Saint and said that he's Democrat because of his faith, not in spite of it. But anyway, in Utah, for the 2016 presidential election, Utah always goes to the Republican, right? But so many Utahns could not stand Trump. They could not bear to vote for him. But they also hated Hillary for a mountain of reasons, but especially because she was a Democrat. They just could not get themselves to vote for her / a Democrat. So they had a third option. Evan McMullin ran, and he got a good chunk of votes. So a lot of people I know who just could not bear on principle to vote for Trump or Hillary voted for Evan McMullin. Now, check this out. Let's see. Yeah, so Trump did win, but if you add together the results, everyone who voted for Hillary and everyone who voted for Evan McMullin, that's more than what Trump got. If all of those protest votes for Evan McMullin had just gone to Hillary Clinton, she would have taken the state by 3.5%. I can't even explain how frustrating that little piece of information is to those of us who cannot stand the man. And yes, did we end up with some people going full on MAGA? Absolutely. I know many, and it's frustrating. But that's not all of us by a long shot. So then we get Mike Lee up for re-election. This is the man who initially campaigned on 2 terms is all a senator should ever get. He had his 2 terms and he's running for a third. The guy lies through his teeth. He accomplishes absolutely nothing. And he has the spine of an invertebrate. So Trump loves him. That tells you a lot right there. But so many people in Utah did not want him back in office. They knew it would be a bad thing. And because, again, of this whole presidential election thing, people can't bear to vote for the Democrat. We needed to get someone else on the ballot. So enter Becky Edwards. If only we could have had her. We could have had her, guys. We could have. she was going to primary him, despite the whole caucus system, which is just messed up. Actually, let's talk about that very briefly. The caucus system is just, it's weird and stupid, and I've tried to understand it, and I still don't. I do know that, like, on the first level, literally you can meet in people's living rooms. Like, I'm going to go to some random person's house I don't know and think I'm safe if I happen to have a different opinion among MAGA people. Oh, that's a great idea. But they also don't advertise the caucus dates or locations. Sometimes you can figure out the date, and then you have to hunt for the location in your area, in your little precinct. It is maddening. It's so hard to be involved. And I've tried to understand the whole process, and it just makes no sense. Here's this little diagram from the Republican Party website of Utah about why it's just so great. No, it's not. It's stupid. And they also have made it so that if there ever is a Republican primary, so the rules are weird, and I can't always figure out how the caucus, and then they get to the caucus convention, and then anyway, sometimes we have a primary, sometimes we don't. But something to do with gathering signatures as part of it. It makes no sense. They've also made a rule since about 2015, you cannot vote in a Republican primary unless you are a registered Republican. So if you are actually in your heart a Democrat and you want to have the slightest bit of say of what happens in Utah politically, you have to register as a Republican. Absolute rhino situation, because there's no other way to have your voice heard. You will not be able to have a voice if you are a Democrat. You have to register as a Republican to have any kind of voice. So there's that. Okay, so Becky Edwards was going to try to primary Mike Lee. She got enough signatures to force a primary. And a lot of us were campaigning for her. We were gathering signatures, or people were donating money. She knows what she's doing. She is not a crazy right-leaning conservative. She's more centrist by MAGA people's standard. She'd be a flaming liberal, but she was great. And so many people put their effort and their money and their everything behind her, and she lost the primary, alas. Not a huge surprise, but a very big disappointment. Now, again, so many of us did not want Mike Lee back in the Senate, but guess what happened? The Democratic Party in Utah did not put forth a candidate at all. They put all of their strength behind the only other viable candidate, which was Evan McMullin, back from 2016, who had run against Trump. And he was running as an independent against Mike Lee, which is the only way someone could probably win in Utah. You can't label yourself a Democrat, you're not going to win. So the Democratic Party said, yeah, vote for Evan McMullin. So everyone was voting for Evan McMullin. His numbers were going up. Mike Lee's were coming down. Right up to about 2 weeks before the election, they were like neck and neck, sometimes with McMullin a couple of points ahead. It was a really close election, really close race. And then about 2 weeks before the election day, millions of dollars from a MAGA super PAC flooded the Utah airwaves with attack ads against Evan McMullin, who was probably the squeakiest clean dude you can find, but horrible attack ads. And those millions of dollars managed to then, help Mr. Lee squeak through a little bit of a win. Notice he actually won by 10-ish points, but that's not the mandate. That he normally, a Republican wins by a heck of a lot more than that. And they literally were neck and neck until about 2 weeks before, when all of that millions of dollars of PAC money got shoved into Utah. It was disturbing and upsetting on many levels. So here is actually what some people have said about it. Let's zoom in so you can see it better. This was the first Senate election in Utah's history in which there was no Democratic nominee, as I said. Lee's performance was the worst for a Republican in a Utah U.S. Senate election since 1974. That's more than 50 years, guys. While McMullin's was the best ever for an independent in a Utah U.S. Senate race, and the best for a non-Republican since 1976. We do not like this man. We do not. We're trying to get rid of him. And between gerrymandering and the far-right creepers, we can't seem to do it. So another little quick example of this. See this lovely gentleman. Yes, he is one of the creepiest people you've ever seen. At least he tans a little better than the orange one. But yeah, he's actually a felon who has all the crazy, scary MAGA ideas that you can imagine. And he has the crazy MAGA people support. Trump pardoned him, and so, okay. But that doesn't make him any less crazy. So the Republican Party had their caucus convention, I guess the step after the living room thing. And there was like Phil Lyman or incumbent Governor Cox. Now, I will say Governor Cox, I liked him his first term. Second term, he's kind of disappointing me. But if it's between him and Lyman, no question. Lyman is a psycho. But at that convention, it was nasty and disgusting. The ugliest of the MAGA you can imagine were in force and screaming at anyone who dared to voice support for Cox. The things that they were yelling at people were disgusting and vile and hateful. Like, I know someone who was doing security there, and the things he said, it was the most shocking, horrific thing. These are people who, by and large, claim to be Christians and Latter-day Saints and proclaim to think and believe what I believe, and they're saying and doing these disgusting things. And it was hard for him to control himself, but he was doing security, and he couldn't, punch someone in the face for calling his wife a They actually had to rush the governor and lieutenant governor off the stage because the crowd was trying to rush them and try to kill them. This is who Phil Lyman and the MAGA people are. So in that caucus convention, Republican, whatever, whack job meeting, they voted for Phil Lyman to be on the ticket. But because of all the signatures or whatever else, I'm not sure how this works. Somehow there was still a primary ballot. And no surprise, the vast majority of the state was like, Phil Lyman, you're a psycho. No, thank you. And Cox was reelected. Spoiler. So yeah, and again, I'm disappointed in Cox this time around. He seemed to have some real integrity last time, and he's slipping and kowtowing to a lot of the MAGA people who are in the legislature, unfortunately. Because again, it's only the MAGAs who are running and have the money behind them. Democrats can't win, and then we end up with these anti-vax, psycho, anti-science people running the state, and it's beyond frustrating. We get every so often we'll get a Becky Edwards, but there are so many awful people in the Utah legislature. It's just beyond frustrating. So yes, do we want to get rid of Mike Lee? Heck yes, freaking absolutely. Like, come on. That is some of the most disgusting things I've ever seen in my entire life. That crosses a line. I had the misfortune once of being at a party where Mike Lee's personal assistant, right-hand woman, was there. We weren't talking politics, and suddenly her boss came up, and suddenly we're talking politics, and everybody else became a wallflower, and I am not going to be a wallflower. So I expressed, well, no, I'm not a huge fan, and she attacked me in the most nasty, horrific, ugly ways. She was snarky and gross. Said, she would never say bad things about any of his colleagues, and then almost in the same breath dissed AOC. And then I looked at her and I said, you just dissed one of his colleagues. And she goes, oh, you mean AOC? As if I wouldn't know what AOC means, like it's a bill or something. And then when she says, what do you not like about my boss? Now, if I had gone to the party thinking there'd be a political debate, I would have come with talking points. In the moment, I was a bit shell-shocked. I couldn't come up with a bunch of specifics at the moment. The reality, though, is that Lee accomplishes nothing in Washington besides kissing up to Trump. That's what he does. So there isn't an actual policy to object to. He's just a scum all around, and he supports the wrong side all around. But what I did tell her, I said, well, for starters, he has not upheld his oath to protect the Constitution. And that shut her up because she knows that, and this is like, I think this was, let's see, this was pre-January 6th, actually. This was 2019, I believe, somewhere in there. Yeah, she did not debate the fact that her own boss, Senator Mike Lee, was not upholding his oath to protect the Constitution. That says a lot right there. And if these tweets didn't already tell us enough, then yeah, the man needs to go. He needs to go. And we're sick of him. So yeah, if those of us in Utah who are like me, you're not alone. We all are aware that he is evil and bad, and we're so sick of him. And it really is like our own little Utah version of having Trump. We can't stand him, and we want to get rid of him, and we can't. So if anyone knows how to get rid of a senator without an election, please, by all means, contact the Senate Ethics Committee. Local Utahns, please call him. I don't like he ignores us, I know, but he has to at least record. The office is legally required to, although I have a feeling he may even break that law. Who the heck knows? This whole thing is exhausting. But anyway, yeah, so that's my rant for tonight. Back to your regular scheduled programming, I guess. Yeah, anyway. Mike Lee sucks. Yeah.